Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back another video from Mother's Basement, and today we are checking out Is Time Travel Isekai? Now, my initial thought was, yeah, because Dr. Stone I class as an Isekai, because he wakes up, I mean, he didn't really go to sleep, but like, we are, as an audience, has travelled back into a different time, it's a different world, so it's like, he's trapped in a different world. But then I instantly thought of other things, say, for example, Erased. Erased is not an... Is, I don't look at that as an isekai. So where's the line? That is just like a time travel anime mystery kind of thing. But anyway, let's I'm not the one making the video. Well, the basement is. So let's check it out. Is time travel isekai? Oh, and make sure to check out my Etsy shop. It's in the description down below.
As you might have guessed from the channel's name, we like wrestling with tough, philosophical questions down here in Mother's Basement. Questions like, is Avatar anime? How much of the live-action Avatar movie can you watch before you irreparably damage your soul?
You know, I've never seen that film, and I don't think I ever will. But that reminds me, there is a video Mother's Basement's done on watching all the live-action adaptations, so I want to check that out. Oh, I should. Yeah, okay.
And can I induce an existential crisis by talking about Goku? In
That was a
every
good
one of
video,
those
though.
cases, the answer was yes. But today, we're going to tackle one of the most contentious and challenging questions we've ever had to face as anime fans.
Ever. My God.
Does time travel count as isekai? And if so, how much? With that said, it's time to get on with the question. And I know full well that for many of you, the knee-jerk answer to it will be a simple and succinct no.
I mean, you heard me at the start. I was like, kind of can be. Like, but where does the line get drawn? So let's find out.
Isekai means other world, after all, and time travelers just go to the same world at a different time. It is right there in their name. However, an isekai protagonist doesn't actually have to leave their reality for the anime they're in to be isekai. SAO is considered a foundational work of the genre, after all, and Kirito's just plugged into a simulation in his bedroom or
there.
the hospital the whole time. The isekai arc of Hunter x Hunter, Greed Island, blurs the line even further when what seems at first to be a simulated world is
Oh yeah, they're actually not, are they? They're on. Yeah.
revealed to be something a little more interesting that I won't spoil, but there's
Yeah, I
still
didn't wanna-
plenty of debate as to if it counts, and personally, I think it does. I mean, the heroes end up in a setting that runs on totally different rules from what they're used to. They're stuck there at first and have to figure those rules out before they can find their way out. Those rules are explicitly video gamey, much like 90% of
so.
isekai,
Yeah.
one could even argue that Gon was predestined for, again, reasons I won't spoil, to be the one who finally tips the balance and clears the game. Coming at the issue from the opposite angle, anyone who remembers a time before 2001 can tell you how different a world can become in just a handful of decades, let alone centuries or millennia.
Yeah. Like, so if you were to... No, I'll let him continue.
So, with a time leap large enough, it's fair to say the
It's a different
experience
world.
is almost indistinguishable from isekai. Completely indistinguishable in the case of Inuyasha, where traipsing back to the Sengoku era places Kagome in a world ruled by magic and monsters that time forgot. She even awakens to her own super special magic powers and a demon-fighting destiny upon arrival, and ends up enslaving a fuckable half-animal person within hours of starting her adventure. The only
Sounds like a really good start to an adventure. I've never watched Inuyasha, but I did like the Inuyasha Abridged episode 1 that Project Mouthwash did, ages ago. Where's episode 2 of that?
only way it could be more isekai is if she landed herself a harem, and I can totally understand that Rumiko Takahashi was a little tired of those after inventing them with her last manga. And even without that element, the case for it counting as isekai is basically airtight. If a new anime fan who really enjoyed Escaflowne and
Escaflowne is such a good anime. Oh my god. I think I've watched Escaflowne 3 or 4 times. Now that's a lot for me. I don't rewatch a lot of anime. I've rewatched Escaflowne.
Fushigi Yugi,
Yeah, Escaflowne and JoJo's are the 2 anime that I've rewatched over and over.
asked you what they should watch next, 10 out of 10 times you'd say Inuyasha, and 10 out of 10 times they would thank you for it. Now, to be fair, all the magic and demons in Inuyasha's medieval setting obviously contribute quite a lot to its overall feeling of isekai-ness, same as they do for the best isekai, Army of Darkness. But can we really say the same logic applies to more relatively grounded stories about modern people finding themselves in feudal Japan, like Nobunaga Concerto, The Ambition of Oda Nobunaga, or Battle Girl's Time Paradox? Well, Concerto's history-slacking protagonist certainly fits both the fish out of water and destined hero
Animation is quite different on this, isn't it? That's quite intriguing.
Tropes so typical of isekai to a T, and he gets his fair share of waifu and wish fulfillment in his life as a feudal lord. He even has a cheat item in the form of his history textbook, though to be fair, that is only useful to him because he's still in basically the same world. The fact that he's traveled through time and thus possesses foreknowledge of coming events is much more relevant to his story than that of Kagome Higurashi or Ashley Williams. In a lot of ways, Saburo's situation's more comparable to a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court. Did I just say Yankee? Oh my god, anime has poisoned my brain. But then, many would point to that very novel as an essential work of proto-isekai fiction, so I'd say it's complicated. As for those other two anime I mentioned, though, their situation's surprisingly cut and dry. If I had a nickel for every time a Sengoku-era anime has been set in a parallel world solely to justify turning all the warriors of Oda Nobunaga's court into hot girls, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. Also convenient for my argument, since not even the stickiest of sticklers would deny that either one of those is isekai. Thus, I see little reason not to count Nobunaga Concerto in the isekai canon. And by the same token, tales of historical figures.
So he's teleported from the past, isn't he, to the future, and it seems like a completely different world to him. So
being thrust into the present, like your boy Kong Ming and Thermai Romai, can be considered reverse isekai. Hell, Shibuya at Halloween. I'd argue Kong Ming did a better job of scratching my The Devil is a Part-Timer itch than The Devil is a Part-Timer Season 2.
It's weird he said that, because I was going to bring that up as an example as a reverse isekai, and I am going to... They've announced more of Devil is Part-Time. It was a weird announcement. They said second season, but is that like the second half of season 2 or what? Why are they so bad at naming anime seasons? It's so bad. But I am actually going to get back into that. I'm currently watching Gundam Witch of Mercury, so I can carry on watching it when it carries. Anyway, back to this.
It's in looking to the future, though, that I think I can make the strongest case that non-magical time travel stories should count as isekai.
Okay.
Sufficiently advanced technology is, after all, indistinguishable from magic. And even when the tech's not quite sufficiently advanced, like in Buddy Complex, which yoinks its contemporary hero 74 years forward to a world of mech warfare, it can still be advanced enough to fundamentally change everything about how the world works. You could easily describe that show as a kid gets isekai'd into Walmart Gundam and get little pushback for it. That's definitely a debatable example, though. Now and then, here and there, probably the single darkest isekai I've ever seen is quite a bit more definitive. Its upbeat shonen hero, Shu Matsutani, spends much of the story believing that the world he gets dropped into, a blighted wasteland ruled over by a mad dictator and his army of child soldiers, is a parallel world of some sort, thanks to its strange geography, alien cultures, and fantastical tech. But toward the end, he's horrified to learn that it's actually a war-ravaged Earth, thousands of years in the future. That twist simply wouldn't work if portal fantasies and time travel stories weren't so fundamentally close in both concept and execution. And it's clear proof that with enough distance from present context, time alone can turn this world into something wholly other.
It's like Planet of the Apes did that twist, didn't it? Where it's like at the end, you see the statue and he's like, "You blow it up! You blow it all to hell!" It's like, oh wow, we've been on Earth this whole time.
Time travel can be isekai, and so theoretically could Rip Van Winkle stories like Seven Seeds, Zombieland Saga, or Dr. Stone. Though with the
I was going to say I'd argue the Zombieland Saga one a little bit.
zombies, I'd argue that only some of them count as having been isekai based on, you know, how long ago they've died.
Been dead, yeah.
Although the most recent one did get hit by a truck. And
yeah.
in the latter case, I'd argue the many points of continuity between old Earth and new that are revealed as the story goes on, not to mention the many old conflicts that get revived along with the people of old Earth, put
New season starting soon.
Dr. Stone in a category all its own. It's certainly got some isekai appeal, comparable in many ways to Ascendance of a Bookworm, but it's more of a Lord of the Flies type survival scenario on a global scale,
Yeah.
with the petrification event taking the place of a boat crash. Kinda like what horror manga classic
Didn't Lord of the Flies, didn't they crash off a plane? Wasn't it a plane crash?
The Drifting
Or are we talking about
Classroom does with its mysterious time slip event, now that I think of it. And I wouldn't really call that isekai either. In both cases, I think the characters just bring too much of their old world with them into the future.
Okay.
Now, that is also essentially what Sunny Boy does with its dimension hopping concept, but that series fits more comfortably into the isekai conversation with its commentary on escapism and growing up. It pulls the characters out of their ordinary world and into something decidedly different, albeit something they and their peers help shape. With all that said, it logically follows that the inverse must be true as well, that a time leap or loop that's small enough for the hero to still find their surroundings familiar shouldn't count as isekai. And
Okay.
indeed, it's self-evidently silly to slap the isekai label on any time travel anime where the time traveled can be measured in days, like Sagrada Reset, Summertime Rendering, or ReZero. Well, okay, that last one's kind of a bad example, but you get what I...
Yeah, ReZero is an isekai because I see what he's saying. It's a bad example because he is teleported already, but the time travel aspect is not what makes it the isekai. It's the fact that he has been teleported into this world. Okay, yeah. Just corrected myself dead quick. Thank you.
And obviously the same is true if the characters only go back a handful of weeks or months or even a couple years. Nobody would seriously argue that Higurashi or Link Click should count as isekai. But that begs the question, where exactly is the line?
There we
How
go.
big
Please,
does the
yes,
difference
answer my question. Answer my question. Where's the line?
between time periods need to be before we move into isekai territory? Remake Our Life sends its hero back 10 years to a world where the internet's slightly slower and phones exponentially crappier to give him a second chance at living his artistic dreams. And while Kyoya's trip to the past does leave him with a whole mess of wishes fulfilled and a harem's worth of hotties attracted, the
Nice.
kind of life he was living doesn't really change on any fundamental level. It just gets better the second time around. The gap between times is certainly big enough that he needs to do some adjusting when he arrives, but no more than would be required of someone who just moved countries, or heck, even provinces. All right, some of you are American. Those are kind of like states, only more, provincial? Anyway,
Right.
Kyoya's less a
I've
fish
no
out of
clue either.
water than a fish in a fancier aquarium. If we start calling that isekai, we may as well call Wolf Children isekai, and that's a slope I really don't want to slip down. But then, when I look at two series that extend the gap by just a couple years, suddenly I'm not so sure anymore. Occult Academy, set in 1999, follows a character who was sent from the apocalyptic future to 2012 to stop the apocalypse from happening.
Okay.
Going from a world where civilization doesn't exist to one where it does definitely would induce enough culture shock to qualify as reverse isekai. But of course, that's a very specific scenario that only really applies to that anime and Terminator franchise, and it's about as far from Remake Our Lives as you can get. Tokyo Revengers is a much better point of comparison, and it may only span 12 years compared to Remake's 10, but the leap from soul-crushing convenience store work to...
Is this worth watching? Because apparently people have just fell off the second season. Like, no one is bothering with it anymore. Let me know.
teenage delinquency is a whole lot bigger than the one from crunching at a game studio to crunching at an art school. Takemichi is forced to change his whole way of life to adapt to the new world of gang violence he finds himself thrust into. And that world certainly plays by different rules than the society he's used to. And dangerous as it is, there's also an unquestionable escapist appeal to overcoming his fears and diving into and thriving in that world. On the other hand, though, his actions in the past do continually have repercussions on his future. The whole reason he keeps going
so very much like Erased
and back is to save the woman he loves, and it takes a lot of tries to get that right. He can't ever afford to truly lose himself in the past or forget the needs of his present self. So the series kind of straddles a line, as does Erased. Satoru has to navigate and blend into the world of
such a good anime. So freaking good.
Late 80s childhood with the mindset of a depressed mid-2000s adult, which is obviously a huge change. But any fleeting moment of joyful nostalgia he might experience there can be ripped away by the killer at any second, so he can't really relax and enjoy it. Now, what's interesting there is that in order to stop the killer, Satoru ultimately needs to put faith in his friends and learn to think more like a kid again, essentially sacrificing the adult that he was to secure a future.
I mean, he does. Oh, God, that ending, man.
For everyone he loves, which definitely fits into the thematic conversation around isekai and escapism, though maybe as a sidebar. Together, though, I think Erased and Revengers demonstrate that the gap between adulthood and childhood can be big enough in itself to create essentially an isekai experience, though both do feature enough interaction with the present to muddy those waters. But then those waters can be muddied even when the time gap is enough to separate whole generations. Zippang follows the crew of a modern Japanese battleship who've been sent back in time to the Second World War and are forced to choose between using their incredible technological advantage to save the lives of their past countrymen or letting history take its course and Japan lose the war to preserve the democratic way of life they know. It's a story deeply concerned with the ramifications the past can have on the present and with examining Japan's bloody history through a modern lens. And I don't think any of that really fits with the escapist detachment of isekai, even though it does cover a span of 60 years, which is similar to the time leaped by the protagonists of Buddy Complex and Iroduku.
It's the level of escapism that we feel that could correlate into isekai. If we're going to do like a mad calculation thing here of what it is, if it genuinely feels like a completely different world, then yeah, it shouldn't really matter how much of a time travel there is. It's not like how many years, it's the change in the world and how much escapism we feel from it.
World in colors about 70 years, and I'd almost certainly classify both of those as isekai and reverse isekai respectively. Of course, no discussion of time travel anime would be complete without Steins Gate, whose actual minute-to-minute plot doesn't really span that much time at all. But
no. Is Zero any good? I've heard Steins Gate Zero is just really, really depressing, so I didn't bother. But I really like the original Steins Gate. The manga was so good as well.
Its parallel timeline hopping conceit does make this whole discussion exponentially more complicated. Early on, the timelines Okabe finds himself in are similar enough to each other that calling them isekai would just be ludicrous. But after he causes the world line to diverge so severely that Akihabara itself ceases to exist, I mean, that does put him personally about as far out of water as a fish can get. But then that's a product of altering, not directly traveling to the past, and other world lines cease to exist when a new one is activated. So scientifically speaking, there's only ever the one world that they're in, and my head's starting to hurt.
Yes,
my gut says it isn't really
No, it's
isekai.
not. It's not.
Ultimately, I think the answer to this question doesn't just lie in the conceptual difference between the times being traveled to in a given anime, but also how time itself plays a role in the story, both in terms of plot and theme. If it's about changing the present or future in some way, then it's more of a time travel type thing. Whereas if it's just about going on an adventure in an unfamiliar setting, I'm comfortable calling it isekai. Okay, so now that we've reached this conclusion, what does it do for us? Well, with the Cult Academy and Erased firmly in the at least kinda isekai bucket, that means all I've got to do is convince you that Silver Spoon is an isekai, and suddenly the genre accounts for most of Tomohiko Ito's career. It also means that I've got several more animes worth of work ahead of me when I follow my career to its logical endpoint and review every isekai in existence in one giant stunt video. So, thanks for that, me. But
Wow.
as for you guys, what I hope you'll take away from this is that genre isn't fixed in stone. It's a malleable, subjective concept, molded by narrative experience and open to audience interpretation. Genre is a tool that helps us understand and categorize the shape of stories, and we can learn new things about the stories we love and storytelling as a whole by applying it where it may not seem at first to belong, becoming better readers and better writers in the process. I'm Jeff Thu, professional isekaiologist, and I'll see you next week for that
Isekaiologist.
lecture on Silver Spoon. Just kidding. Next week is going to be the long-awaited cult anime Part 3 featuring the ghost of Stan Lee. Please look forward to it.
Whoa.
Onegaishimasu.
Yes, Cult Anime Part 3, let's go. That's something to look forward to. Sick. Sick. Those Cult Anime videos are boss, man. That was cool. That was a nice little look into it. Yeah, I'm glad he mentioned Erased, because I knew what he was talking about. I haven't watched all the anime. I've watched a few, you know. But yeah, cool. Oh, that's something to look forward to next week. That's sound. And that was a cool video. Very interesting. Yeah, I feel like the level of escapism that we experience within the world that the character is teleported into would dictate whether it's an isekai or not. If it's just simply time travel to like a year prior and it's just the same place, nothing's changed really. So yeah, cool. Make sure you check out my Etsy shop. I've got t-shirts and hoodies that I design every other week. Well, every 2 weeks, down in the description. Pretty cool. And thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of every video upload, link in the description to the Patreon page. $1 more /support channel. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for that. Thank you all for watching. Once you guys think of that, once you guys think of this, click like, subscribe, and leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch, discuss in future videos. I'll see you guys next time.